This is Prospect Avenue in the fall of 1986, the golden anniversary of the Office of Population Research. The OPR family has grown to over 300 in these 50 years, and we are scattered from Bangkok to Bloomington, Addis Ababa to Zaire, Vienna, Austria to Vienna, Virginia. Here in Notestein Hall, the family tradition goes on. Jane Menken taught the demography course first taught by Frank, and then by Ansley, a class which includes this year students from Ethiopia, Finland, Japan, mainland China, and the United States. The tradition has always been one of people working together on research, and that is still what's happening. Now let's reminisce a bit about how it all began and how we got where we are today.
Well, I was an undergraduate at Princeton, about to graduate in 1939, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but late in the spring, now you couldn't do this now, but in those days, late in the spring, I thought I wanted to go to graduate school, and I went to see the dean of the graduate school, who was also chairman of the math department, and I'd had a course in freshman mathematics from him, Dean Luther Fahler Eisenhardt, and he remembered me. I'd done well in my freshman course. And I said I wanted to go to graduate school and study mathematical economics. Well, it didn't exist as a discipline then, although there were a number of economists who knew some mathematics. And so the problem was to go to a university, as he said, that had a good economics department and a good math department. And he said, Michigan, maybe Harvard. He said, but you really ought to come here. We've got the best math department in the world. He was chairman of it. So I said, well, I hadn't planned to keep on going. But anyway, I listened to that, and a week later, I got a note in my mailbox. In those days, the mailman used to come to the individual rooms in the dormitories in Princeton and deliver the mail. And I get a note from Frank Notestein, the founding director of the office, saying that the office had a fellowship, the Milbank Fellowship, that supported a graduate student completely, and the only requirement was that the graduate student had to take the courses in population and continue to have an interest in population. And that was enough to get me interested in the field.
What I've been thinking about is the first time I ever met Frank Notestein, and it was when Ansley and I were engaged to be married, and we were very, very young, and I was taken in to meet Frank Notestein, who was very up, standing very straight, sitting very straight behind his desk, and scared me half to death, absolutely. And of course we became very fast friends, and to this day, I think our children think of the Notesteins as being part of the family. I mean, that's simply the way it is. But I still have to laugh when I think about the very first time I ever met Frank.
Where was that?
At the OPR in, where would it have been, 20 Nassau Street in those days. Dudley Kirk was a very young clerk at the time, and Ansley was an even younger person and was still a student.
Frank hired me as a research assistant, and I worked on a project the office had started on the future population of Europe and the Soviet Union, and designed the method of projecting the populations of all the countries of Europe. And then I did indeed go in the Navy in early 1942, and the book came out on the future population of Europe and the Soviet Union with me as a co-author. And in the preface it says that this co-author has not seen the manuscript and is now a lieutenant junior grade in the Navy. I was teaching radar at MIT. And then I came back to the office. I made a mistake in 1947 when I came back to Princeton as an assistant professor in economics. I worked on other things that I had gotten involved in the meantime. And sort of a declaration of independence from Frank in the office, I decided not to go back into demography. And it wasn't until after 6 years that I decided to ask Frank if he'd take me back in the office, and that started me back again. So I spent about, well, whatever that is, about 11 years, 5 in the Navy and 6 doing other things outside of the field. And every now and then I think back and I said they might have been pretty productive years if I had stayed in the field, but you can't have everything. You can't relive your life. I have no complaints.
In those days, Ansley and I were married just before Pearl Harbor, I remember, And the Institute of Advanced Study had just come to town. And as you know, the members of the Institute were very frequently refugees from Hitler Germany who'd been offered refuge at the Institute and really became very much star turns in the intellectual world in the United States and the world. And Princeton really wasn't quite ready for that. And there were people in the community who really had kind of dubious thoughts about who these strange people were who were coming into the community. It was a very parochial town in many ways, very much a small town.
I remember that we had as our cleaning person there a very charming East European refugee who 5 years later left Princeton after having graduated from the university.
One of the things that Frank did was to get the university to authorize allowing him to invite foreign students who were not degree candidates come for a special training program.